Hello, I'm Daryl Elliott, and just wanted to show you my barn find Model A here and suggest that you might want to considering wiring your vehicle yourself instead of buying a wiring harness. And that's what I did here. When we first got the car, the first thing we were going to do, of course, like any barn find, you're going to try to get the engine running first, which we did. And then it was easy to go ahead and wire up a ignition switch and have the ignition all wired. So then I wanted to do the lights. Let me show you some of my work here. So we have here's the that's your parking lights. Then these are your low beams. Those are your high beams. All on a switch here. And then those are the fog lights. And how about I'll do some four ways here. I'll leave those on while I'm talking. So what's the advantage of wiring up yourself? First of all, we wanted to get the vehicle on the road with as little effort as possible and as little expense, but we wanted it to be safe. So we went ahead and did the wiring on it, wired up the lights, wired up the stop lights, wired up of course, the ignition, and also I changed it over to 12 volts, and it worked out really well. Now I'm going to show you a little more near the end of the video on how we ran the wires and everything. So the thing is, when you wire it yourself, you know what you have. You know, if you wire it, then you know it. And if you have a problem on the road or something you can't figure out, you know, however many circuits you want to have, I've got 5 circuits, 5 fuses on this. It's very easy to troubleshoot and figure out where the problem is. Do a little rewiring if you have to, but you shouldn't have to. I mean, you wire it yourself and do it right, and it's going to be very durable. It's going to last a long time. So let me show you some of the things you're going to need to have, which most of you probably already have. You've got to have a good set of side cuts, and I highly recommend the Channel Lock, made right here in Pennsylvania. You won't find a more durable set of side cuts. You've got to have butt connectors. I'll show you those in just a second. And this is a Thomas & Betts, an old one I've probably had for 50 years to crimp the butt connectors. Got to have a good wire stripper. I love these. And these are made were made by Craftsman. I'm not sure they still have them, but any electrical supply is going to have good wire strippers like that. You got to have a voltmeter, probably volt ohm meter, and you can get one fairly inexpensive. You got to have need to have butt connectors. This is just where I keep them here. You're going to be using the blue ones and the red or pink ones most of the time for your 14 and 12 gauge, which is what I recommend. I had a lot of wires left over from other projects I did, so it brought the expense down, but I had done quite a few wiring on other projects. You need to have shrink wrap. This is this particular shrink wrap is provided by Dorman, and it's available in most auto supply. But shrink wrap at least an inch beyond each connection. It's going to make things a lot better as far as water getting in and so on. And then for the shrink wrap, you need to have a heat gun. Got this one at Harbor Freight, very inexpensive. I think it was $24. Don't use a match. You're going to be doing too much. Get a heat gun and do it right. That's the way to do it. And, oh, you need to have, excuse me, probably going to need to have some conduit, plastic conduit. There again, this was Dorman. It's provided by Dorman. Now, the only place that I did use the original wiring, it was still in good shape, the wiring on the horn, because it goes through the steering column. It was in good shape, so I still did that. I did not buy, the horn wasn't any good that came with the car. It had been a replacement horn and it was junk. So there again, I went to Harbor Freight and got one for 20 bucks. It seems to work fine. So enjoy these, the rest of the video. Please take a second and hit the like and the subscribe. I certainly will appreciate that. And let me know if you have any other questions, and we'll be in touch. Thank you very much. So I rewired my Model A without a wiring harness. The original wiring harness was done, and this is a barn find Model A that I wanted to get on the road as soon as possible. And I had plenty of wire. I went ahead and wired up the ignition first of all, just to get the vehicle to help so I could get the engine running. And after the engine was running, I wanted to wire up the lights. Actually, first I decided to go 12 volts, and I went with the Snyder kit for the alternator, the 12 volt alternator, and just put a ballast resistor on my 6 volt coil. Then installed the alternator, which came with everything I needed. And as you can see, I went with an electric fan only because I heard from a number of people how the fan blades were breaking off. And I've had a lot of experience with electric fans. And you can see I cut the blades off my two-bladed fan and had to modify the electric fan a little bit. And that is a 14-inch fan. And I put it down at the bottom. It was the only place really I could fit it. And it seems to be working pretty well. So I did the original wiring on the ignition, and pretty much all 12, some 14 gauge. I put a 30 amp fuse on that coming from the starter up, and I use that for my ignition and my accessories. Now, let me just show you the interior of the car here. Grab my light. Yeah. So what I did, I put two switches here. I mounted two switches. The one on the left is my ignition cutout, which means that if I want to run my accessories without running electricity through my coil and points and everything, then I just turn that off. Of course, the switch has to be on to run the engine. And the second one is for the fan. Now, I have several different circuits. First of all, I run the turn signal switch, turn signal and four ways. I run that with the ignition. And also I have that for any other accessories I might have. I use that for my GPS speedometer there, you can see. So I have up front here, I have 4 circuits, 4 fuses. The one is a 30 amp for the ignition. Then I have a 20 amp for the lighting. I also have a 15 amp and a 30 amp. The 30 amp is for the fan. The 15 amp is for my horn. But here again, I'm on a budget, so you can see this is not a Model A horn, but it suffices, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So those are the 4 circuits: the ignition and accessories, the lights, the horn, and the cooling fan. Now we'll go around back. Let me open the garage door here. I'm going to do a video on this barn find. It's been so much fun. And at my age, 76 years old, it has made a big difference in my life just having this to play with and get on the road, which I have. But for now, this is about the wiring. So, going to the back of the vehicle, I looked for some period correct lights, but just couldn't quite swing it so financially. So I just went to Walmart and got some trailer lights, and they've worked out well. I used the original light mount that was on it. It only had one light on it. You know, they usually, I guess, only came with one light. I used that for my license plate light, used the bracket from that light for my license plate light, mounted my license there. And it came with the rumble seat, of course. Okay, so I just wanted to show you, I wanted to have a cutout, and I went with this cutout from Summit Racing. I ran my ground from the battery. The battery's in the trunk. I ran my ground from the battery. There's where the battery is there. Through the switch, so I could shut everything off with that switch. Now for the lights. Well, you can see it here. For the lights, I used this switch. First of all, I just didn't like that whole switch assembly that the Model A has. And I know if you get a wiring harness, it's a lot easier to do that, but I was not going to mess with that. But I did use, the only original wire I used was coming through the column because it was in good shape to work the horn. So the horn's still on the original one. And of course I told you I wired that up with another circuit. So it doesn't sound exactly like a Model A, but close. So now I wanted to show you the switch. First position is the parking lights. Second position is the low beams. And third position is the high beams. And I used the LED lights. Again, I got those LED bulbs from Snyder's. And I've really bought a lot of stuff from Snyder's. First of all, because they're close. They're only an hour away, and I can run over there and pick stuff up very easily. And if I come up with a couple bucks. Also, I have the other circuit. The 5th circuit comes off the battery. So I did put a fuse on that, on the battery. I put a fuse, and so I've got 5 circuits total. Now, that circuit off the battery works 2 things. My interior light, and 3 things. And here's the switch I used for my electric windshield wipers from Snyder's. And I also, that circuit works the stoplight switch. I replaced the stoplight switch. By the way, the stoplight switch did not work. It stayed on, the stoplight stayed on all the time, and realized my pedal wasn't coming back quite far enough. So I got checked in my archives of all my stuff from cars I've worked on for the last 60 years. And I found a throttle spring in there that just worked perfect. So that's basically the wiring. Worked out really good. And I used the cow lights for the front turn signals, because you know the parking lights are actually in the headlights with a separate bulb. So that's where we are on wiring. I can't think anything else to tell you on that. So I will do, as soon as I can, I'm going to do a video on this barn find. And I'm sure you will really enjoy it, because this has been a real pleasure. A couple things I didn't mention in the main body of the video was, first of all, the light switch came from Summit Racing. These Chinese turn signal switches are economical. They're only like 20 bucks, but the problem is they don't work very well. If you can afford it, just save up a little more money and go with a good quality Truck Light Signalstat. I guess Truck Light owns Signalstat now, but it still is called the Signalstat turn signal switch. I believe it's a model 900, and it does everything you need it to do. It's somewhere between, I've seen them for 73 up to about 100 bucks, but these are only 20 bucks. And the problem is the relay that comes with it. Let me show you that relay. The relay that comes with it doesn't work. It absolutely, you will not get it to work right with the cheap, very cheap relay that comes with it. So luckily in my archives I had a better, this is a Dietz relay that I had, electronic relay. Signalstat makes that too. It's not Chinese, it is, they are made in Korea for Signalstat, but they're about 20 bucks, and go with one, because the original one will not work right. Now, what I'm gonna do is, let me put the key in. I've got two keys, one for the door. I replaced the door handle over there. Gonna turn the ignition on. Now, again, as long as this switch is off, you're not putting electric through the coil, but your accessories work. So here's turn signal. You see it blinks. Right turn signal. Now, this just busted. I hadn't even driven the car 50 miles when this busted. This is your four ways. So I have this clip here to put on to make the four ways work, which is ridiculous. So I did want to mention those items. And get wiring diagrams. I should have mentioned that before. I bought the Model A wiring diagram from Snyder's. It has the complete wiring setup for both with cowl and without cowl lights. It's a nice big diagram. The other thing that's important as far as wiring goes is get a diagram for a hot rod. You can get all kinds of diagrams, schematics, and so on online. So find one that's easy to follow there. And, you know, I use butt connectors and shrink wrap on my connections. Just so it's going to last. I also did use a 10 gauge on the one wire alternator that just goes from, you can see my 4/0 cable coming from the battery up to the starter, and then I have a 10 gauge that goes from the alternator to the starter. And I also use the 12 volt hookup on the alternator for some circuits, and the hookup on the starter for some. I wrapped that really good. I put some shrink wrap on it because it is a 6-volt starter, and I'm running 12 volts through it, and it likes to throw sparks when I hit the starter. So it's just good to protect that. Also, you can see I wired up the distributor with regular wiring and have that going to the coil. And then the other thing is the wire on the other side. I'll show you that. The wire on the other side for my temperature gauge. I like to keep track of the temperature. I always get nervous. Model A's are running too hot. So on the other side here, I'll show you how I hooked up this temperature gauge. It's working really well. Hooked that up to a Stuart Warner temperature gauge that I found online pretty inexpensively. However, the sensor kit costs more than the gauge itself. And that's all I can think of right now on the wiring. So I hope this helps you out. I certainly do recommend, when you do all the wiring yourself, I had wire left over from other projects I've done in the past. But I'll just tell you, if you do the wiring yourself, you know where everything goes. It's so much easier to troubleshoot. I see online so many people just with horror stories of their cars, their Model A's breaking down on the road, and they're trying to trace wires and trying to figure it out, and it's just a nightmare. And I can tell you, take a little bit of extra wire and some tools with you, and if you have to rewire something on the road, it's easy to do. Keep the lights working, keep the ignition working, of course. And I just think it's a good way to go. It's not going to look good in a show, but I'm beginning to think that more and more people aren't that concerned about getting trophies with their Model A. The more important thing is have something that's very drivable. So thank you very much for watching. Don't walk, drive your Model A. All right, I'll talk to you later. God bless. So the two things that, the two gauges I wanted to have, other than a working speedometer, was a temperature gauge, as I mentioned, and a voltmeter. And so I added these. I got the add-on, which was very easy to install, the Stewart Warner temperature gauge and a voltmeter. Now, that's an inexpensive Chinese voltmeter, and it works great as long as the car is not running. I'm going to go with a little better one. It works great, but when you start the car, it can't take the vibration. My speedometer doesn't work, so that's why I've got my GPS, so I know how fast I'm going. Because, buddy, I want to tell you, this thing runs. It's a very comfortable car at 45 miles an hour. And so I wanted to add that. And as you see, I have the switch off here. Let me turn the fan on. It's a little quieter with the hood down, but it's a nice marriage of sounds between the fan and the Model A engine purring along. And so I'll add to the video if I can think of anything else on the electrical side that I think you need to know. Thanks again.